In the last video, we were introduced to the quadratic formula, which is a way to figure out what x equals, find the solution, when the function is in standard form. Now, remember that a quadratic function can either have 0 solutions, 1 solution, or 2 solutions. In the last video, both of the examples had 2 solutions. In this video, we're going to see what happens, like what it looks like when there's either no solutions or 1 solution. So let's start by looking at this one. In this first example, we know that A is 4, B is -1, because there's nothing there but the minus sign, so -1, and C is 3. Now we're going to plug all that stuff in. So to the quadratic formula, so we have x equals the opposite of b, which would be a positive 1, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so now when we look at that, we can simplify it. -1 squared is 1, because -1 times -1 is 1. And 4 times 4 is 16, times 3 is 48. So 1 minus 48 is -47, all over 8. Now we have a problem. We've said before that you cannot take the square root of a negative number. And here we have the square root of -7. Whenever you end up with this situation where you're trying to take the square root of a negative number, you can just stop right there. And the answer is no real solutions. So let's draw an arrow pointing to that. And we're going to say you cannot take the square root of a negative number. So this means no real solutions. So whenever you get a negative under the square root, you know that there's no real solutions. It's going to look something like that, where it's not touching the x-axis. Now let's look at example 2. In this example, A is going to be 1 because there's no coefficient. B is -6. C is 9. So we have x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, simplifying that, -6 times -6 is 36. 4 times 1 times 9 is 36. 36 minus 36 is 0, so the square root of 0 over 2. Now, if you notice, we're taking the square root of 0 here. The square root of 0 is just 0, so it's really 6 plus or minus 0 over 2. Now 6 plus 0 over 2 is just 6 divided by 2, or 3. And 6 minus 0 divided by 2 is just 6 divided by 2, or 3. It doesn't matter if we can even write it out. 6 plus 0 over 2 equals 6 over 2, or 3. 6 minus 0 over 2 equals 6 over 2, or 3. Either way, if you're taking 0 and you're adding or subtracting 0, it's going to be the same either way, because if you add 0 to something or subtract 0 to something, it doesn't matter, it just stays the same. So, if you end up with the square root of 0, move that up so you can see it better. There is one solution. that will be a situation like this, where it just touches at one spot. In this case, it touches when x equals 3. Okay, so if you have the square root of a negative number, there's no real solutions. If you have the square root of 0, there's one solution. And then we also know the other option is 2 solutions, and we can just review that one more time, but this is the same as like in the other video. In this function, a is 2, b is 4, and c is negative 3. So we have x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And then we can simplify that. See what all that equals. We have 16 there. And then 4 times 2 times negative 3 is negative 24. So 16 minus a negative 24 is the same as 16 plus 24, which is 40 over 4. And the square root of 40 ends up being a decimal, so we can just leave it like this, and that is our solution. And because whatever is under the square root is positive, we can take the square root of it. It's going to change what it is if you add or subtract it. So that means 2 solutions. So we can say over here, if the square root is of a positive number, then 2 solutions. So that is how you know. That's how you can tell if a function has no real solutions, 1 solution, or 2 solutions when you're using the quadratic formula, is if you get a square root of a negative number, which is not possible, the square root of 0, which won't change anything whether you add or subtract it, and the square root of a positive number, which would give you 2 different numbers as you're adding and subtracting, giving you 2 different solutions. I hope this video is helpful. Go ahead and try the practice, see how you do. Remember, if you have any questions, you can always email me, or I will see you at our meetings. Bye.